Action for Healthy Kids webinar, School Breakfast, District Rollout of Alternative Breakfast. I'm Ellen Dillon, a Regional Field Manager for Action for Healthy Kids. Next. Today we're going to be recording our webinar. You can listen via your speakers or your telephone, and you can see that on the right-hand panel under audio. So if you decide to call in, you can use it that way, but know that everyone is muted by default. But we would like you to submit your questions so that we can answer them during the webinar. We will be following up with the recording as well as any other handouts or copies of the slide deck for you. So you don't have to take copious notes. You'll receive everything afterwards within about 24 hours. My name, as I mentioned, is Ellen Dillon. I'm the Regional Field Manager for Action for Healthy Kids. I've also worked with districts and schools across the country to improve their breakfast participation through alternative breakfast programming. We're pleased to introduce Judy Smith from Sheboygan Area School District in Wisconsin. She's the District Coordinator of School Nutrition, as well as Meredith Duquesne, the School Nutrition Outreach Supervisor. They're going to be sharing their experiences as they've been rolling out alternative breakfast in Sheboygan as well as in other Wisconsin area schools. Next. So let me tell you a little bit about who Action for Healthy Kids is. We are one of the national leaders in fighting childhood obesity by helping to increase physical inactivity and physical activity in schools and improves nourishment by helping schools become healthier places. We're moms, dads, teachers, students, schools, and community leaders, and school wellness experts, and we've banded together to create healthier learning environments for our children. We believe that everyone has a part to play in ending the nation's childhood obesity epidemic. Our programs, tools, and resources make that possible. Next. We were founded in 2002 by former Surgeon General David Thatcher. Today, we're more than 60,000 members. We are partners with dozens of professional organizations, government agencies, and corporations at the national and local level. Next. We believe very strongly in the learning connection, and we'll be talking about that today. Where in that, as students who are eating school breakfast will be able to focus more in the classroom, they learn better, and they're able to improve both their math, reading, and writing test scores. And in our report, The Learning Connection, you can find out more details about this and be able to share this with others in your school and around your community. So here's our agenda for today. We're focusing on how districts are able to roll out alternative breakfast programming in multiple schools. And so we'll be talking a lot, focusing on planning, programming, piloting of alternative models, and then how to get the implementation in place, communication strategies, as well as follow-up strategies, and some special considerations in terms of menu planning and some other things that might come up that might be of important considerations as you're working on rolling out breakfast at your district. And we'll also have an opportunity to talk about questions towards the end. But remember, go ahead and submit those questions in. Caroline Rafael-Blanco, our regional manager, is also answering questions on the back end for us. So we'll make sure she has an opportunity to do that for you. So the biggest thing we want to start with is planning. Planning is key to any successful program. And when we're talking about bringing in a new alternative model, it's really important to be thinking about where are you currently. Being able to analyze the current level of need, meaning the free and reduced percentages of students at your school, and knowing where those schools lie. So if they're very high in free reduced, but very low in participation, they're a great candidate. Maybe they have a middle level of 50% of free and reduced, but maybe their current participation is really high, so maybe they don't need as much impact at their level. So you really want to look at where your schools are currently, and then you know who to target. And you also want to do a cost analysis, because by being able to show others in your district how much money you're losing by not having participation increase is a real motivator. So if you're not sure if a superintendent will support you, or maybe you need to convince a business manager that this is good business, we highly suggest our partners from the No Kid Hungry organization, they have a school calculator that will allow you to plug in different numbers. It'll allow you to also plug in to see, you know, what your costs are, and then where your break-even points are. You know, where are you when participation increases, your reimbursements increase, and then from there being able to see how much you would be able to make to create a sustainable program, making that the goal of this program. Next. So then, once you've determined what schools to target, you start to think about what are the models. What models would really be the best in your schools? And in terms of an ideal, there is what we believe and what studies have shown is the best participation increases come when, A, that breakfast is offered at no charge. It removes the stigma related to children eating breakfast. It creates an easier process because all children are receiving breakfast, and there's no charge for it. So when we do that, we know that's the best. But just making it free doesn't mean that kids are going to eat it. We need to move it. We need to move it from the cafeteria before the bell to after the bell, and ideally in the classroom after the start of the day.
Ellen, I have an example. This is Meredith. We have 2 schools that are on universal free breakfast right now, and at one of the schools they have the traditional, they eat in the cafeteria, and only 32% of our kids are participating. And then the same, or a different school that has universal free, they're in the classroom, and that's over 90% of the kids that are eating. So it's kind of interesting, like how the stats are. So like
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I think we see that a lot when any school that we work with who has a high free and reduced where it's almost free anyway, 80–90%. It's almost free, and their participation level might be around 20 or 30% because it's in the cafeteria. It requires the kids to arrive well before the bell rings. It requires them to go to the cafeteria, which is often in a spot that's not very easy to get to, or there's so many other things going on, whether it be, you know, hanging out with their friends when they're older students, or just, you know, playing on the playground with younger students, and just arriving in the time that allows for them to get in, eat their breakfast, and get to class is really a struggle. So we find that really the best model is when it's a breakfast after the bell in the classroom and at no charge. Okay, next. But there are other models, and we want to talk a little bit about that because sometimes some models really work better in different schools. So we talk about during school hours, meaning after the bell, where breakfast is delivered to the classroom. Often we find that to be most successful when we're looking at elementary K through 6 age students. Then there's also a grab and go to the classroom. So they're picking it up from carts or in the halls or from the cafeteria, and they're taking it with them to their classroom. That's another very successful model. It can pretty much be in any grade level. And then we also see grab and go to the hallways or homeroom or after second period. Sometimes we hear that as referred to as second chance breakfast. And we're also seeing in some of the high schools, particularly, where students have a little bit more flexibility in their scheduling, that the reimbursable vending machines are also an option, although they're very expensive and they're expensive to purchase and maintain. So, you know, you give up a little bit when you do that, but the students really seem to love those because they feel like they have, you know, it's kind of cool and they have a little bit more control and power over those items. Do you have any, what types of programs do you have in Sheboygan, Meredith or Judy?
Hi, it's Judy. We have at our high school level instituted a breakfast in the classroom, and we have individual carts with the milk and the actual bagged breakfasts in crates that go down to each classroom. And we have gone from 11% eating the traditional to 50% eating in the classroom this year. And that's a new program for us, and that's at our high school level. And then we also have an interesting split model. Little kids were making big messes in the rooms when we did universal free in the classroom. So the teachers wanted to have the little kids eat in the cafeteria, and then the older kids are eating in the room at one of our elementaries. So we do a split model there, and that's working very well.
So with the little ones, do you take them all down to the cafeteria at the same time, or is that like staggered on the like breakfast shift?
Yeah, they all go down together, and there's like 7 classes of teachers that all head down there at the same time. It's, you know, it's not that many kids. It's like 100 kids. So.
Yeah, and that's a program that works really well when we see, you know, I think the biggest issue with cafeteria sizes is, you know, we have staggered lunch shifts because we can't fit all the students in the cafeteria at the same time. But if you can bring in a group at the same time, I think that's another way to be able to feed everyone and have it be a very similar as if it was coming to the classroom, but minus any other of the issues that kind of come along with it, sometimes mess and trash and things like that. Very good. All right, and we're going to go ahead and move on to the next. So there are some logistical considerations. You really need to be thinking about the physical space that you're working with. What schools, you know, we know that a lot of schools are different ages. We have some very old schools where maybe the cafeteria is on one floor, like the basement floor, but it needs to get food up to the, you know, the 3rd floor, and there's no elevator, or the elevators aren't able to, you know, go from floor to floor. So it really, you really need to be able to think, how would you transport the food to the classrooms, or how would you get to the kiosk for the grab and go? And the key with the kiosk is you really want to be able to make sure that your kiosk is located in a high volume, high traffic location. So that way everyone has an easier path to get to that. I know, and one of the things that maybe Judy or Meredith will share a little bit more with is about technology. You know, being able to have wireless capabilities is really important in some schools when you're especially working with your kiosk. Makes it easier, quicker, that kids can scan their cards or plug in their key numbers, like on the little pads there on the right-hand side. You see the keypads, and being able to capture that in real time, and it enables, you know, being able to do whatever tracking systems that need to be done with the students' purchases or picking up of their items. And then another thing is, because of the increased participation, you know, I mean, we're going from 30% to 80 or 90% at school. There's increased food. You need more food, more storage opportunities. So sometimes you need to have more refrigeration or increased deliveries of your food items so that you're able to keep on top of the participation as well as your ordering. Have you encountered any of those types of logistical situations as you've been rolling out alternative models at your school?
Yeah, with increased storage, this is Judy. We basically have had to. Hopefully they'll step out. We've basically had to go to deliveries from Central more often, because we went from 50% eating to almost 90% eating, and our schools are 300, 400 kids. So you have to be very cognizant of that, and then also looking at the menus to make sure you don't have a lot of frozen products on in 1 week. You're going to cycle them, do if you have more dry storage, obviously do the dry storage items.
Great. And then with your wireless capability, I know that that was something that you were working on this year. Is that so that you can have your kiosks in different locations in the school?
Yes, we're working on, we have a old technology system, so right now we have, the teachers can pull up a roster and then check the students off as they get the reimbursable meal in the classroom. And we're going to be going to a new software yet this year so that we can actually scan the kids and take it down with us so that we can serve in multiple points. And that's one of our key items that we want to be able to do.
Great. That's terrific. All right, the next, please. So one of the things you have to be thinking about is as you're thinking of what model you're going to implement is what equipment you're going to need. For breakfast in the classroom, you need some type of insulated bag, something that's going to keep cold foods cold and warm foods warm. And there are bags that can do both of those things, and as well as how you're going to move it through the school. And so you see two different types of delivery service here on this page. On the left-hand side is, in the yellow bags, are wheeled bags. So each classroom can pick up their bag and take it with them. Either a teacher can pick it up, students can pick it up, the cafeteria staff can deliver it, other free staff could deliver it. There's lots of different ways it can get there. Or on the right-hand side, this is a neat way, is utilizing the radio flyers and being able to set up those little red wagons as the delivery. And so students pick up their classroom supplies and they take it to their classroom with them. And again, depending upon how many and how it's set up, but the different bags contain their milk and all of their reimbursable items. And then if we have a grab-and-go cart, usually you're needing some type of way, again, to keep items hot and cold. Maybe a portable milk cooler comes in handy here, as well as being able to use a repurposed salad bar is one way I've seen schools be able to get past having to purchase a new cart or a new kiosk. I've seen schools set things up on tables and then have, the portable milk coolers there as well. And then having some type of disposable bag to carry the breakfast to the classroom or to another location is important. Some schools I've seen use a clear bag so students can see the items in their bag, and then it becomes like a trash bag too. So thinking about what equipment you might need is important, so that you'll know, what costs are involved and what you're going to need to be able to set it up. Or anything you want to add to regarding equipment?
I think one easy way that I did that was a Metro type silver metal cart, and you could fit milk. If you think of milk crates across the shelf, you could fit 4 across. We had a school that had 16 classrooms, so we put all our dry products right in there. And then we had the ice sheet, and then we had the milk underneath it. And we took it down to the whole wing of the classroom then. And by being able to do that, then we could fill it a lot faster because we actually used it as a filling station as well. So it was a dual purpose 4-shelf unit.
Great. So really it's thinking about maybe what you already have, what you can use at a school level, or what you might need to help, do the job better, quicker, faster, and more efficiently too. So great. Thanks for sharing that. Next, please.
Helen, we did have one question come in. One of the members asked, for the high school program where there's a grab-and-go cart brought down the hallway, do students give their student numbers to purchase, or are they offering the items as serve versus offer?
For our high school system here in Sheboygan, what we do is they get a reimbursable meal using their ID card. And they can decline an item. And we also take a laminated sheet of instructions, and we put it on our bins that go to the classroom to let the teachers know what a reimbursable meal is, so that there's no doubt. And so they know that they have to have the fruit or veggie, and then they have to have 2 other components. So if it's 3 out of 4, they know that. So it's pretty defined for us. But we do use the cards for our high school.
Great, thanks.
Super. So other things that you might need to be thinking about when planning equipment is around cleanup. You need to make sure that there is enough trash cans and they're strategically placed, that you're using some heavy-duty trash bags because sometimes you'll be cleaning up liquid and you really want to make sure that it's contained within the bag. You might need wipes to clean desks off or other types of classroom cleanup. So some of these things are really, A, to make the job better, and B, also because, you know, when we're dealing with the people that can make this program successful are our teachers and our custodial staff. And if we can make their job easier or efficient, then they're not going to be balking at the program or complaining about the program. So being able to determine the needs and with your custodial staff is important. Did you include your custodial staff when you were thinking about and planning your alternative models there?
This is Judy. When I've done this in any of my districts, what we did was a startup meeting for planning, working with the principal first, and then we met with teachers, custodial staff, and we talked about any barriers we would find. Our biggest problem within the classroom was if they didn't drink all their milk, what do you do with it? So we actually had like a milk dump pail at the end of each hall, and then like a large garbage can at the end of the hall that they could empty the garbage into, instead of the custodian having to go to each individual classroom and get all the garbage. Another option we did was a plastic bag that they could put this classroom's garbage in and then just haul it out to the hallway, so they could do it either way. But the way to be successful that I have found is by including them ahead of time and having them have ownership in it and be involved in what are the needs for that building.
Yeah, absolutely. And the quickest way to failure is not to include some of these stakeholders. And so by being able to get them in early, know what their concerns are, and being able to address them, A, it helps them to, like you said, have ownership, and then B, feel like their concerns are being heard and addressed. Great. Next, please. So how are you going to be able to fund this? Well, there's lots of different ways. We do know that there are grants available. Action for Healthy Kids, for example, offers grants every spring for school breakfast. We offer district grants that allow for multiple schools within a district or to a single school. But we also know some of our partners, whether they be through dairy, Share Strength No Kid Hungry campaign, AASA, the School Superintendent Association, FRAC, which is the Food Research and Action Center with their Partners for Breakfast in the Classroom. And we also know local, state level, and local hunger advocates have funding that supports alternative breakfast models. The key here is that by increasing participation, that A, you're going to then be sustainable because your reimbursements will be enough to continue your programming, that the initial investments of equipment and maybe some resources for technical assistance will get you in place, but then have enough participation coming in to allow you to continue the program and continue to add on as needed. You can also find that through some of your vendors that they offer opportunities for kiosks or breakfast in the classroom insulated bags. So you might want to talk to your vendors too to see what kind of options they have to help provide you with equipment that you might need. We do know that because it benefits them, because you're able to buy more product, because your participation increases, it's a win-win, and they'll often have programs that provide additional equipment and support that way too. Next, please.
Ellen, I wanted to mention here in Sheboygan, the Milk Marketing Board has money that they can also help you with, and they helped us with some of our bags here. And then we also had Hunger Task Force assist us in getting the carts and the bags for one of our new programs this year.
Great. So yeah, it's being able to, leverage different partners and leverage funds to make different things happen in your school. So depending upon your needs and who's around and what you can do, it's being creative and being able to find funds where you can and then allot it to different areas. And it's, like I was saying, there's sustainability issues, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later on, but funding can also come in because you have different needs that crop up. So maybe when you first got started, you weren't able to offer a hot breakfast, but as participation continued, you also saw that, students want a hot breakfast, so then you needed to add some warmers or some insulated bags for the warm foods. So being able to continue and expand upon your programming too is important. So one of the things that Judy, I believe, said too was the key really was in planning and before everything even rolled out was finding that support, starting with the principals and getting the buy-in. And that's really best done through one-on-one communication, creating a plan as to, letting them know why you think this is important, sharing the data with them, and by them understanding they know what the academic impact is, but sometimes they really need to be able to be brought to a head by saying, wow, I have 300 students in my school, they have 80% free and reduced, but only about 75 of them are eating breakfast on a daily basis. And that if I could increase my breakfast participation, I could also increase so many other things at my school. Behavior improves when students are eating a school breakfast. It's documented. We've seen it in schools across the country. Scores are increasing. We know that to a principal, they might not be thinking about every other aspect and positive aspect about having a school breakfast, but they do know that when it comes down to academics, that's their area of expertise, and they know that hungry kids can't learn. And so this is important to them, and it's going to be something that they're going to support often, but just making them understand that the change isn't going to negatively impact their school, their day, or their learning environment. So how did you engage principals when you were rolling out your programming?
We started with principals that we knew had interest in improving their test scores and that we had high economic need schools started with. So when I started here 3 years ago, we only had 7 schools in the breakfast program. The start of my 3rd year here, and we're up to 24 schools in the program. And as we added the schools, when we did our board presentations, we would show numbers and we would show which schools had programs and which schools didn't by showing all 26 schools on a chart. And it seemed like once we had success with one, then they'd all want to jump on board. So for us, we then met with them individually, discussed what their needs were, and we were blessed to be able to get the Action for Healthy Kids grant, and that helped us because to roll out such change as we've rolled out here, we couldn't have done it without the support of the grants. And sharing data like the articles that you mentioned, like these studies show why they need breakfast, and this will impact your scores because, are they learning what you're teaching them, or can they not learn because they're so hungry that they can't? And I think by sharing the data and just real easy to read flyers that we were able to get through organizations like Action for Healthy Kids, that really helped us a lot. And also, again, having them have buy-in. And in some schools in the past, I've had the staff talk about, do you want one count grain item because it's easier to open, or do you want 2 items? So having the staff kind of be involved in the menus seemed to also help us have them have buy-in and ownership.
Great. Yeah, that's important. And, you know, and also I think you mentioned it's starting with those principals that were more willing. You know, I mean, don't make your battle too difficult, especially at first. I mean, don't go against the one that's the loudest, you know, opponent to it. You go with the ones who are going to embrace it a bit more and be more easy to work with, because, you know, if they're the ones who are also going to advertise, sell it to their colleagues. So you want those that are going to have an easier time in gaining their support. Great. Okay, next please. So one of the things that we want to talk about too is the idea of piloting. So this can be done with an individual school level. So you might try a couple of schools. I know that in Sheboygan, just like Judy was saying, was that they started with a few schools and now they're up to 21 other schools. So, you know, being able to start with a smaller number makes it sometimes manageable, but it doesn't mean that you can't roll out to multiple schools at the same time. It's just really having that opportunity to pilot it beforehand, work out some of the kinks, build a network of success, and determining those and identifying the best practices in your area, knowing that every school can be unique and that just because it works in one school doesn't mean it's always going to be the same exact, it's not going to always look exactly the same from school to school. In one district I work with in Montgomery County, Maryland, what they do is that they roll out their Breakfast in the Classroom program in May to their new schools. And so what they do is they roll it in May, they work on it for a month, and so when students come back in September, then that's what they're expecting. So that's a nice way to pilot a program too. So sometimes it's a matter of doing it with a small number of schools, and sometimes it might be multiple schools but for a smaller period of time and then rolling it out the next year. And that seemed like a good plan as well. Anything you'd like to add about piloting programs?
This is Meredith. Last year, because of Action for Healthy Kids, we were able to do a hot breakfast day in April for our special event, and it actually went really well at one of the high schools, and so we decided to carry it forward, and we did, it was like a hot breakfast pilot for 3 weeks, and the results were really good. The participation went up by quite a bit, so we ended up adding hot breakfast as a second option at all of our secondary schools, and we've carried it through this year now.
Oh, that's great.
And we added like a school, and then we might wait 2 weeks and then add another school anytime that we do programming, so that we don't have more than 2 or 3 schools going on at a time, so that we can handle it, because we'll bring staff out to help train. Mm-hmm. And I think having those extra hands in the beginning makes it more successful and easier to implement if you have those extra hands. So even if you want to add all your schools in your district in 1 year, you can. And we've done that with other programming we've started here, but you just have to give yourself a couple weeks so that you can continue to do your other job duties.
Great suggestion. Yeah, I mean, that staggered start really is successful too. You know, and depending upon, it depends on the school too. You know, sometimes you just, you know, if you have the summer to build it in, and you can start it in all of your schools at the same time, but you know that the beginning of the school year is going to be really, really difficult, and maybe it's all hands on deck instead of a few hands on deck. But in this case, I think the staggered start is a way to roll out often. Great. Okay, next. So this brings us to implementation, and that's really what Judy just talked about with training is so important. Being able to train your key stakeholders is going to make your program successful. Taking the time to train your teachers so that they know how to ensure the reimbursable meal is what is taken. how to use, especially for breakfast in the classroom or at grab and go even, when it comes to the classroom with their food, how to use that time so that it doesn't negatively impact instructional time, and that they can maximize that time for instruction as well. So there's lots of activities that can be done and ways to, further their time too in the classroom. And then food service, how prepping the bags, what needs to go in where, how to be efficient, when to set things up, when to pack it up, what temperature things need to be stored at, and then, how to take things apart when it comes back, and being prepared that way. And working with the students too for cleanup and transporting. Students live up to expectations, and when things are provided, those expectations are there for students, they often live up to them, whether it means, they're eating, high school students on their way to class, and they're disposing of their trash in trash cans, rather than on the floor. It's about the expectations that are placed upon them. And then working with the custodial staff to create a cleanup plan. Judy talked about in her schools that they were, as some schools found that it was easier to have individual bags, and they put it outside the classrooms for pickup, or some schools are putting everything in one central bag. So, whatever seems to work best for that custodian, again, creating ownership and control over the situation. But it also is sometimes, we are also hearing from custodians that not having to clean the cafeteria before lunch is really a plus for them, because it's a short window. And so if they're serving breakfast and then cleaning it and doing their other job, it's tough to get all that done.
Ellen, one other thing that I've found is that in the classroom, they used to have a milk or a snack break. So they were already eating in the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
So they already had things to clean up. So basically, the way I sold it was we were replacing that milk snack break, and then the parents didn't have to provide the food or the nourishment. We were providing it. And that seemed to work where it was more of a morning nourishment than, quote, a breakfast.
Got it. I've also seen schools where there's a lot of carpeting in the lower, especially in the lower age groups, and there's that fear of milk being spilled or something sticky being spilled on carpeting. Sometimes, schools will buy a steam cleaner, and being able to have that as an access is just having it, and then they never ever find that they need to use it, but just knowing that they have it seems to make everybody happier. All right, so next. And then bottom line is it's all about communication. Being able to communicate is key, and knowing what messaging is important is key too. So being able to think about who your audience is and what is important to them. So if it's a principal, often it's academics, behavior, attendance, those things that are related to the learning environment. Teachers are also concerned about academics, but they're also seeing how hunger is impacting their classroom, whether it be that they're providing some snack foods or because kids are leaving their classroom to go to the nurse due to stomach aches or headaches, or to pick up food from the nurse. So the hunger can sometimes be the key message that impacts teachers. Finances and academics for your superintendents, being able to see the bottom line and the dollars that are being lost by not feeding these kids is really sometimes enough to sway those business managers, the superintendents, to be able to jump on board. And then with parents too, finances, the academics as well as the health, that that the school breakfast is governed, it's controlled by the USDA, and so the food that's often being eaten in the cafeteria before school is much healthier than sometimes the students are even getting at home. So being able to see the health benefits as well is important to our parents. Anything with communication, did you come up with any type of flyer or, when you're rolling out a new program, did you do anything special to communicate with parents, for example?
We were able to have flyers printed, and then we have a Friday folder that goes home, and then we put the information out on our website, and we were able to do trifold boards where we would advertise our programs for PTO meetings, and we put sample breakfast items on the table so that when they came in they could see. And we've also had them sample some of the items. So like, let's say we had one of the banana breads or blueberry breads, we would cut it in thirds so that the parents could taste the whole grain bread and see what it would look like, so that they understood that this was what would be happening in the near future.
That's great. I think that's key to, involving parents, engaging them, letting them, sample and including it where they already are attending, whether it be a PTA, PTO meeting, or family functions, and including that with your food service, and being able to provide breakfast as an option is a great idea, and taste testing is a great idea. Next. So one of the things I know we've also heard from Meredith and Judy is by having, a plan or a group who's working on this. So at the district level, there's often a breakfast committee, and it's involving those as they're planning it, and then bringing it to the school level. It helps to get feedback to tailor the program as needed. It also is proactively preempting any of those issues that might be coming up that are small problems, and then to avoid them becoming big issues. And it also helps us secure commitment and buy-in. So being able to have multi-level folks on your breakfast committee is important. There can be a teacher representative, it can be a student representative, a parent, an administrator, a custodial staff, and being able to have all of their voices in the planning stage, and being able to have them as part of your communications is important too. Next. So this isn't a one and done. I think one of the things we learn really quickly in changing a model or changing school breakfast is that, we are seeing improvements, and sometimes they're very immediate. I mean, we just heard an example of, a free breakfast in a cafeteria having very little participation, and a free breakfast in a classroom having very high participation. But it sometimes needs tweaking, it needs follow-up, it needs continuing engagement. It needs continued evaluation to be able to see, where is your participation level, and then, making sure that if there's, signs of trouble, so to speak, like dips and ebbs, then you're able to address those, having the taste tests, including students, doing surveys, having focus groups. And even in this picture, we're able to see, students being able to choose their breakfast items. And, it's for all levels. It doesn't have to be, just elementary school. High school students love to have a say and be involved in decision making. So be really thinking about your follow-up and making sure that you're engaging. You might not be engaging as frequently as you did when you first were implementing, but you're still following through and following up with your schools. What type of follow-up are you doing in Sheboygan with your schools or with your cafeteria staff or teachers?
Well, out at the schools every year we always do taste testings, and actually I just did one today where it was a bunch of different breakfast items, and I went out to an elementary school, did that with the kids, and really that's like the best way that we can reach the kids. It's been hard to create groups to have kids on it because they're in school and a lot of them can't stay after or come before. That has been definitely a challenge for us. But we have had some teachers that have had interest, and they do want to be on our committees.
Great. Great. Next. So then there are some other considerations to be thinking about too. We did talk a little bit about menu selection, being able to offer hot and cold options. Maybe you aren't able to always offer a hot and cold option, but maybe, you're being able to, especially in cold areas like Wisconsin, we know that a hot breakfast is probably much more appealing than a cold breakfast, and being able to offer that when you can, or once you have participation levels that will sustain or support new hot materials or hot items is important. Meeting those meal standards, obviously, is a key. It has to be there. We've talked a little bit about ease of service and consumption and packaging, and sometimes there's a little bit of pushback regarding waste and or prepackaged foods. And we know that in these programs, a lot of times that's how they are served, because it is easy. They can grab it and put it in their bag and take it with them. But we do know that schools are creative, and they're able to find ways to package items that are more of a scratch cooking, and or work with their vendors to find foods that are tasty as well as meet the meal standards. And as we talked about, incorporating those taste tests so that you're able to find out what's working in your schools and what students like. And being cognizant and aware of allergy issues. We always know that when we're talking about food anywhere in schools these days, that allergy issues are important. And whether it be in the cafeteria or in the classroom, it's working hand in hand with your school nurse as well as your food service and your teachers helps to determine how to make that happen. How do you guys address allergy issues with breakfast in the classroom, for example?
Well, for us, we only address it if it's a child that has a disability, so they have the doctor's note on file, and then they get like a special type substitution if necessary. Otherwise, it's offer versus serve, so most of the time they have enough options where they can just decline those.
Great. And then there are other considerations too to be thinking about. Next, please. So thinking about sustainability, we talked about that earlier. You want this program to be paying for itself, and so maybe your investment early on was helped out by others and funding, but it shouldn't require ongoing funding from other organizations to help maintain and sustain your program. And sustainability also means to keep interest alive, and I think we've heard it from the example that Judy and Meredith shared, was that they're constantly reevaluating and making sure their programming is being effective and developing new things to keep the interest alive. So we can't always serve the same old. I think it's designed to maintain the same level of participation. And I think one of the most important things is being flexible. We talked about it earlier that we can't always fit every school in the same model, and being flexible and knowing that you need to meet the needs of the school, and sometimes it's the physical needs of the school, and sometimes it's the needs of the staff and the principals, and making adjustments and being flexible to make adjustments is important. What are any other challenges or considerations that you've encountered in your work there or in other districts around Wisconsin?
I think just figuring out how to get the food most effective way, efficient way to hallways for, which carts to use, not something that's too heavy to push, you don't want it too tall, what kind of bins to use. Once we had the equipment purchased through the grant money, been able to sustain the programs that I started everywhere because there's not the additional cost, it's just the food cost, which we would have had anyway. So I don't really see too many problems once you start, as long as you do the planning and the communication and you get the buy-in ahead of time. Having done this in multiple districts, I also found that having positive PR, whether it be the TV station, paper, and interview the principal on this wonderful initiative, and the principal gets praised and they get the public relations outpouring, it actually it empowered them to make the program theirs, whether whoever started it, it didn't matter, because we're doing what's right for kids. So I think that was really key. And then also sending the principals a thank you letter in the staff, or doing something for the staff during, whether it's National Breakfast Week, some kind of just a small token of appreciation to let them know, a note, a card, you know, we appreciate you recognizing the importance of breakfast. That's essential in all the programs that I've done, being in multiple districts, building up programming, which is something that I love to do, because the more I can impact kids, the better off the kids are. I think that's probably my summary from my experiences. I don't know about you, Meredith. I just think making sure you address, you know, any concerns they have immediately, challenges immediately, found here in this district. Meredith has found to, you know, be prompt with your responses to them, and make sure you have staff on hand to help.
Great. Super. And then I think we have a couple of questions. Caroline, can you share a few of the questions with us?
Yeah, we did have one question come in. The school had asked, how does the district offer 1 cup of fruit at breakfast, and do you see a lot of waste?
What we do is we have a juice box for half of the cup, and then the other half is usually like a whole fruit, so like a banana, an apple, a pear. And the reason we do that is because it is shelf stable, so then the kids can take that home with them if your school would allow that.
Great. Yeah, I've seen that in a lot of places, that having like a shared table too is a nice way to avoid waste. Any other questions, Caroline?
Yeah, we just had one other question. Do you also offer for breakfast in the classroom, offer versus serve in the classroom?
Individual schools make the decision, and so the one elementary school does not, but our high school does. So we just work with them on it. The principal feels that if the children aren't hungry at that minute, the food is theirs, that they can have it, and they can eat their, you know, muffins or graham cracker or their juice at a later time, because a lot of times they used to have breaks in the afternoon, like a snack break or a fruit and vegetable break anyway. So the kids own the food, so they feel like it's beneficial, and I do not feel like waste is an issue. I know we've had that question with salad bars as well since we instituted those. Our kids know what a serving is, and our kids don't appear to waste, and our costs are not that much higher by doing what we're doing.
Great, thanks. And then we had one more question come in. What were some of the ways that you advertised the breakfast program? Did you use flyers, case testing? What other ways did you do to promote the program?
Our website for sure, and then we did the Friday folders home where we stuck the flyers in. We also made posters for the walls. There was a banner that we received when we got a grant, and we did this big kickoff event. I believe it's in the month of April. Meredith typically goes out and handles all the events as the nutrition outreach. I try to go out just to get refueled by seeing the kids. We give away giveaways that week and encourage everyone to eat. And so we advertise that, and then we also have something unique in Sheboygan. Before school starts, for our employees, we have something called an employee back to school bash. So we do a nutrition table, and we talk about school nutrition programs, and we have our information about our breakfast, our FFVP program, which is our fresh fruit and vegetables, our lunch program, and Meredith will do something strange like, you know, chocolate chip hummus just to get them to stop. And then we'll talk to them about the curriculum that we want to institute in the classroom, or we'll talk to them about a new breakfast program rolling out. So that gets all of the teachers, custodians, and everybody that's in the district gets points for going for wellness. So we have over 600 of our employees come to that, who, and those employees obviously have kids in the district as well. So between the bash and all our flyers, webinars, and we also did call home. We used School Messenger to call home and say, starting at your school, breakfast, blah, blah, blah. And that worked really well.
Great. Super. Those are all great strategies. And just for the sake of time, I think if there are any other questions, we'll just go ahead and answer them offline. So if you have a question, we'll make sure we get it answered for you. If you haven't already, be sure to follow us on Facebook or YouTube, Pinterest. We get lots of ideas. We highlight different activities, whether they be physical activities or games or recipes or other ideas related to school wellness. So if you haven't already found those, we encourage you to follow us. Next, we also have a breakfast. Action for Healthy Kids is offering a breakfast video contest. So if you are offering an alternative breakfast model and you want some extra funds, we encourage you to submit a video. If you go to this link, you'll find more information as well as a flyer. But it's $5,000 to the grand prize winner, so we encourage you to take advantage of that. Next. And if you haven't taken the pledge to make every kid healthy, please sign up, and it takes a couple of seconds. You'll also be notified when our grants are available and get all of our resources through monthly newsletter. And we thank you for your time. My information is on the next slide. So if you have any follow-up or you need any information on how to improve your school breakfast program, please feel free to contact me directly. I'm happy to help. I work with schools and districts across the country all the time. And if I can't help you, I can try to find someone that is locally to you, or someone else on our staff that can help you. So please contact me with any questions that you might have. Thank you so much for joining us. Look for your follow-up materials within the next 24 to 48 hours. And thank you to Judy and Meredith for your time today and joining us from Sheboygan, Wisconsin. And thanks for everyone joining us today. We appreciate it. Have a great day.